We are at the verge of AI. OpenAI. Altman has said now that he thinks 2025 will be the year that AI becomes sentient, whatever that means. Artificial general intelligence will emerge, and who knows how that affects. I've said publicly, and I'm kind of half joking, that we need AI government. It sounds crazy to say, but instead of having this like alpha chimpanzee that runs the tribe of humans, how about we have some like really logical, fact-based, program that makes it like really reasonable and equitable in a way that we can all agree to. Right. Let's govern things in that manner.
Right. So you can actually simulate this today because you can go on these systems, ChatGPT or Claude or these others, and you can ask, how should we handle issue X? How should this be run?
Yeah, we've done that.
Right. How should the Department of Energy do whatever, nuclear policy or whatever? And what I find when I do that is I discover two things. Number one, of course, these things have the same problem social media's had, which is they're tremendously politically biased, and that's on purpose, and they need to fix that, and that's going to be a big topic in the next several years. But the other thing you learn is if you can get through the political, basically, bias and censorship, if you can actually get to a discussion of the actual issue, you get very sophisticated answers.
Yes.
Right? And very logical, very straightforward, and it will explain every aspect of the issue to you, and it'll take you through all the pros and cons.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, it might be the way to go.
Yeah.
Which is so horrifying for people to think, because everyone's worried about the Terminators taking over the world. And like, if that's the first step, is we let them govern us.
Well, look, there's nothing stopping a politician from using this. There's nothing stopping a policymaker from using it, as a tool.
Right.
You start out, at the very least, you start out using it as a tool. There's nothing to prevent. Like, for example, I think military commanders in the field are going to have basically AI battlefield assistants that are going to advise them on strategy, tactics, right, how to win conflicts, and then it'll start to work its way up, and then they'll be doing, war planning. And then if you're a general, if you're a sergeant or a colonel or a general, it's going to just mean you perform better.
Yes.
And so maybe there's like the sort of man-machine kind of symbiotic relationship, and you could imagine that happening more in the policy process and in the political process.
And there's also AI-controlled jets, which are far superior. Yeah. They did. Mike Baker was telling us about that. They did these simulated dogfights, and the AI-controlled jets won 100% of the time over humans.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of reasons for that, and part of it is just simply the speed of processing and so forth. But another big thing is if you don't have a human in the plane, you don't have the what do they say, the spam in the can. You don't have the you don't have the human body in the plane. You don't have to keep a human being alive, which means you can be a lot faster and you can move a lot more quickly. And
G-forces,
much higher G-forces.
Yeah, and then there's no option for someone to go crazy.
Yeah, that's also right. Yes, exactly.
There's no human element.
Yeah.
Which is a real element.
Yeah. No, look, I think it's going to be common to have like Mach 5 jet drones within a few years, and they'll be a fraction of the size of the current manned planes, which means you can have like a lot more of them. And so you kind of want to imagine 1,000 of these things like coming over the horizon right at you, and it really changes. It's actually, I think, going to be very interesting. It really changes the fundamental equation of war in the following sense. Fundamentally, in the past, the people who won wars are the people who had the most men and the most material.
Right.
So you just needed the most soldiers and you needed the most equipment. And in this drone world that we're talking about, it's going to be the people with the most money and the best technology.
Yeah.
Right. And so, for example, small states, small advanced states like Singapore will be able to punch way above their weight, and then kind of large, sort of economically or technologically backward states that normally would have won will now lose. And so it's going to be a recalibration. And then it has the good news is you're not putting soldiers at risk, right? So you'll have a lot less death. But the bad news, arguably, is it'll be easier to get into conflicts because you're not putting soldiers at risk. So there's going to have to be a recalibration of like when you actually like lean into an attack.